Okay, hello everybody. This is Exposed Manosphere, but you can call me Aaron, and I'll be interviewing PsychoCandy about the history of the red pill slash manosphere. Now, the main reason why I want to do this is because I'm actually currently working on a project about the history of the black manosphere in particular, as well as well, the history of the black manosphere, as well as current and its potential future. And when doing the research on the history of the manosphere, I realized that there is no coherent narrative, that you can't go anywhere to find a narrative. When you talk to people, they kind of give alternative stories and insert themselves into the narrative when they had nothing to do with it originally. So in this story, I'm actually going to talk to Psycho Candy because he actually been following this group for quite a long time and know more about it than I do, even though I have read some blogs and forums from years ago. So you can introduce yourself real quick if you want.
Hi, I'm Psycho Candy, or David, as some people found out.
Okay, and I'm actually going to jump into this interview right away because I don't want to be here forever and be like these live streams that go on for like 2 and 3 hours. So the first question I have is, you told your story that you found the manosphere at a young age. Do you mind recounting that story again for those who are unfamiliar with it?
Sure, what really led me down the rabbit hole, I believe, was I first started off with PUA and then made my way PUA as a pickup artist. Rouge V was one of the prominent pickup artists at the time, but he had a forum called Return of Kings, and I would go to Return of Kings and just search for questions and query things like, what are women like in X country? What are women like in Brazil? What are women like in Italy, and whatnot? And then I eventually meandered my way down to the next stop, which I believe was MGTOW. And then after MGTOW got old, I went to Red Pill. After the Red Pill, it was Idmore and SYSBM. I would keep track of them and just listen to. I was a devoted listener to Zenata Clutch and a couple of others. And then after that, I went down through, I believe it was incels. And then after the incel stuff, it was Black Pill, which was even more nihilistic. And after Black Pill, that was it. Yeah, for me.
Okay. And wait, how did you exactly even find it? I know you say you found the Roosh V and all his other websites and forums, but how did you actually find it at such a young age?
I believe somebody might have. I believe they've started talking about MGTOW or something, or men going their own way. I got caught up in like the rights movement too, because like at the end of the day, this movement is to me really political before it's social, just like feminism, of course. And so I was like an anti-feminist, I guess, and that's how I kind of got down through the rabbit hole, because they do mix political and social issues.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Now, I do want to add, because I know a lot of my subscribers only listen to the black sector of the manosphere. So just in case you don't know, Roosh V is a infamous pickup artist who was the owner of Return of Kings and other forums, and he published a series of books called Bang. So it'll be like Bang Denmark, How to Bang Ukraine, all these other various bang things. And recently he actually converted to Christianity, which, according to the Washington Post, isn't actually unusual for radical white men. Actually, yeah, white men who are pretty politically radical. So that's his trajectory. But he's a pretty major individual in this whole manosphere red pill community. So, now I have visit Return of Kings, and I'm kind of curious. Can you tell the audience like what the website pretty much discussed? I've read various blog posts from there, even from individuals who people know now, like Donovan Sharp and Obsidian, who published on that forum.
Yeah, it pretty much discussed like what women are like in other countries, the so-called true nature of women, why men shouldn't get involved with women, and other kind of. It just gets a little bit more misogynistic, if you will, but that's what's on the site. Misogyny and just nonsense passed off as intelligence, I suppose.
Yeah, I remember one post I saw was talking about like women who hit the wall, and it's like a juxtaposition of like past and present photographs. But then I look more into it, and some of the photographs weren't even the same person. they were just they were just pretty much trying to mock women who had age, which is of course natural among all human beings. So yeah, you said before that you found MGTOW before it became big. I'm curious because the origins of MGTOWs is very gray. Like, there's no clear understanding of its history. So, how was it before it blew up?
A lot more orderly. They had a couple of well recognized, if you will, MGTOW. There was Sandman. He's kind of like the great value of MGTOW. He's like a generic YouTuber, goes on in a monotone voice, rehashes these videos about women and whatnot, and they all pretty much, you've seen one, you've seen all of them. Then there was Barbarossa, I believe, Barbar, who I believe they say is Dominican, but it's just speculation for me. He was supposed to publish a book, I believe, and never did. I'm not sure. And then you had Stardust. Stardust still makes content, but he goes by the Thinking Ape. He is I believe he's a German man, or maybe he's an American man that moved to Germany,
Mhm.
but he lives in Germany. A lot of people don't really tune into him too much because he was at one point a white nationalist. I don't know if he's
Mm.
changed ways or anything. Probably not, but yeah, you had Thinking Ape, Barbarossa, Sandman, and I believe a few other individuals that I can't recall at the moment.
Mm.
It was a lot more orderly before 2015, I would say, because 2015 is when things started to change.
Okay, we say more orderly. Were they still talking about the same topics as they do now? Like, pretty much don't cohabitate with women, don't get married, etc.
Yes, but it wasn't like as childish. It was just, hey, don't be careful of who you get into a relationship with. Don't be ready to move in with women too easily. Be knowledgeable about the divorce laws and child support, since most of these guys like to go on about child support. Be knowledge of those laws and whatnot. So it was more like an actual educational resource for men. But maybe about like 2017 or so, it turned into a joke.
And what happened then in 2015 and 2017? Because I know like the alt right kind of merges with the men's rights movement, and of course influences the red pill and later manosphere.
Yes, I would say what happened was that it gained a bit more traction,
Hmm.
and you just had didn't know, people who didn't really know what the group was about or what the core tenets of the group or movement philosophy was about, and they just started coming in because, hey, I had a bad experience with women, or a woman did this to me, and now I'm just gonna put myself in part of this group. Pretty much just using the group as a emotional tampon, if you will, just to steal from some former people in the space who observed this about MGTOW at the time. They were saying that men are coming in here and using this as their emotional tampon until they get a woman, and then they leave. And they leave.
Hmm. So these are like YouTubers or just people on like Reddit forums coming in vast numbers.
Uh, I would say probably people who come in from Reddit, because there is a MGTOW forum.
Hmm.
But I would say a lot of people, they get introduced to things through Reddit before they come to YouTube, I would say.
Hmm. And I remember you said like opportunists kind of monetize it. Okay, like I mean, because I think when I think of prominent MGTOW people, I think like Sandman and Coach Greg Adams, who now have literally made money off it. But you watch their content; it's really redundant, actually. But it's evergreen content, and it kind of appeals to men who are hurt in some fashion.
Yeah, and then they go down the rabbit hole, and then you have some people that try and pass off common sense as all this newfound knowledge, when it's common sense. It's something that should be something that you should know of, at least. Uh, they do have, but yeah, like Coach Greg Adams, I would consider him an opportunist. He's like the black version of Sandman, if you will.
Hmm.
He puts out daily content nonstop on women. There's some other channels like The Better Bachelor, Single
Mm.
Successful Male. That's at, it was like at that point that I realized, okay, these guys are all putting out the same thing. They're milking this, so I'm gonna have to cut back on whoever I'm subscribed to. But I never really tuned into Coach Greg Adams or any of those guys too much anyway, because they're pretty milk toast, if you will.
Yeah.
Pretty bland.
Okay. So yeah, I'm kind of curious. We're talking about MGTOW, but I'm also thinking like when the red pill curve. So from reading Donna Zuckerberg's book, Not All Dead White Men, which she examines how the red pill communities appropriate ancient history and like Greek literature, pretty much as a way to reinforce the notion that white men are the authority or the intellectual authorities. Joe, she documented how the red pill kind of coalesced in 2012, but then later broke up into adversarial units. So did you witness that?
Yeah. After, so to kind of differentiate from the people that were coming into MGTOW and just did not have a knowledge of it and just straight up started like hating women. Uh, I would say that's around the time when I saw the red pill form and
Mhm.
other little movements that formed, TFL, True Force Loneliness. Back in the day, there was a guy, Bill Greathouse, and another guy, Dwayne, two old, I would say almost nearly decrepit white guys. And then you had Steve Hoka. Steve Hoka's still on YouTube. He's had his channel. He's gone through stuff with his channel where he's taken down videos, put videos back up, and whatnot. But those three individuals I named were pretty much the three individuals that kind of rallied around TFL and started this whole TFL movement. So that way, people didn't really kind of identify with MGTOW. There were other avenues of identification. Later along, incels came. But yeah, you had the red pill, and then after the red pill, I started hearing about blue pill, which blue pill was pretty much your standard run of the mill, normie, normal person who has 2.5 kids, house, white picket fence, a wife that loves him and whatnot, goes off to work, takes care of the family. That's pretty much what a blue pill person is. Purple pill, you're pretty much a mixture of blue and red. So you still kind of believe in the blue pill fantasy, or as they say, fantasy, but you have the red pill knowledge, if you can call it that.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's kind of around the time I noticed that MGTOW was kind of dying, and then red pill, blue pill, black pill sprung up. All of the pills.
Still here. So yeah, before we get into the blackmails here, which I want to talk about because that history is very like just scrambled. Now you did mention the fact that you did engage with the incel and the TFL community. And I know some of my subscribers don't know what that is. Like, you just tell them what that is briefly.
Yes, incels. It's short for involuntarily celibate, which is pretty much that. If you're going to go off of the literal definition of the two words, you really can't get sex like that. But if you talk to most incels, and I myself would agree with what they say, is that you can't really get access easily to intimacy. Like, you're denied intimacy. True force loneliness is the same concept. TFL. It is pretty much where you're doomed to be alone
Hmm.
for the rest of your life. Kind of like Forever Alone. So Forever Alone and TFL are pretty much the same. You can throw incel in there too as well, but that's what incel and TFL are about.
Now, I'm kind of curious, even though they're similar, I think most journalists would agree that incels are by far more misogynistic and violent since they are responsible for several mass murder incidents.
Yeah, you do have some of that associated with the incel community. They do rally around Elliot Rodger, who, interestingly enough, probably did not know of the Manosphere or incels, but they tend to kind of use him as a figure, Saint Elliot. But yes, that the community is unfortunately associated with some incidents like that. But that's not all of it. But there are a couple of angry guys in there
Now, I'm
who,
curious. Oh, continue.
yeah, who should kind of learn how to manifest their anger in more healthier ways.
Now, I'm curious because I know you're African American, and racism is pretty omnipresent on incel forums. I noticed that in 2018, after it became mainstream from the Toronto van attack. And for those who don't know, the Toronto van attack occurred in April 2018 when 25-year-old Alex Manasseh rented a van and drove down Yonge Street, a busy street in the city of Toronto, and killed, was it 15, no, it was 10 people and injured 15 people. And so that's when incel became more mainstream when journals started to cover it. And I remember that's when I first heard of it. And I would visit these forums, and I mean, the racism was pretty like disgusting, honestly. But what was so odd to me was that there were a lot of like non-white people in those forums who tolerated it.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's more like a term of endearment, kind of like how black people have the N word. They refer to each other as there's the cell prefix or a suffix.
Hmm.
They'll attach it to things. So I'll just say the more G-rated one, black cell. Of course, they would use the N-word cell. For Indians, there's Pajit cells, or no, curry cells. So it's not really a politically correct community. Most of the members tend to kind of rally around that and throw it around, but from the outside looking in, it could be uh, definitely looked at as racist. But I suppose within the community, it's kind of like their term of endearment. I didn't really mind while I was in there, but I didn't really encounter it like that too much. If anything, I was called a Chad. I
Uh,
I guess because of my bone structure, I couldn't really be incel, but whatever.
mhm.
But
Okay. Okay. Now I do want to move on to the black manosphere because most of my subscribers, that's what they know. And the reason why I asked the first question is because you need that context to understand the black manosphere. So yeah, I want to know, can you tell the audience how the black manosphere is formed? As you know, the black manosphere has various reasons why it was created. So they cite the feminist movement, welfare policies, daytime talk shows, which is my favorite because it's the most laughable one, and other factors. But I'm curious, like, well, how exactly did this group form to what is known as now?
um, they don't want to say this. They don't really talk about it too much. Most of them probably don't even know. Back in 2015, I believe, there were a few white nationalists in the movement. Again, this is a political movement before it's a social movement, and the alt writers kind of were linked into the movement, and uh, there was Hammerhand, I believe, who identified as a white nationalist. I don't know if he's changed his opinion or outlook since then. You could easily go ask him, but I doubt it. It was him, Stardust. Stardust was another avowed white nationalist. They were on kind of like the whole HBD, human biodiversity, bell curve type of thing. And a lot of the black men really they were not liking what they were hearing. So they were like, "Oh, that's racist," and pretty much broke off to form IBMOR and SYSBM. And IBMOR stands for Introspective Black Men of Reform. SYSBM is Save Yourself Black Men, which I beg to differ. I beg to differ on that one.
Okay, now, Kira, so we talked about the formation. Like, I remember one time in a conversation you said a lot of the black manosphere can be linked to Tommy Sotomayor and David Carroll, but there were other people. So, who were some of the earliest members that were spewing some of the same rhetoric that the black manosphere does now? Like, I know Doug Tishon is one of them, but I've never seen any of his videos.
Yeah, Thug Titian's account isn't around anymore, but he is. There are more of his videos. But I would say kind of the original, more intelligent members of the Black Manosphere were Thug Titian, with Sergeant Willie Pete. You had, I want to say, Dark One's son was one of them. People actually thought he committed suicide, but no, he's still around. We might have had a few other people that I'm missing. I think there was Big JX. I don't think he would like me mentioning his name, but Big JXXX was one of the original ones of the Black Manosphere. Yeah, those were pretty much the original guys who were actually talking about knowledgeable stuff. It wasn't like how it was now, to where it's just become something to beat on women with.
Okay, even though you said knowledgeable, if I'm okay, now I know some people might jump on me for this, but if I'm correct, wasn't Sergeant Willie Pete kind of blamed for the Agent McGowan incident?
Yeah, he was, because I believe Anthony Powell was listening to him at the time. Yeah.
And wait, I funny. I watched Anthony Powell's videos, and a lot of his talking points were kind of similar to what people talk now. I'm kind of curious. So, what are some of those topics that they talk about that people still you know complain about?
Oh, the same old. They limit it to black women, I suppose, because they are black. But I look at it like this: I didn't limit it to just black women, but they say things like, "Oh, black women are, they're mean, combative, rude." They love the whole educated lame thing. This is the only community where I've seen people kind of make up these weird terms for each other. Educated lames, Pookie and Ray Ray. If you ask me, some of these people are kind of like Pookie and Ray Ray, just with a degree. That's it. But yeah, they would do the whole, black women like thugs. They like men who are no good for them. But I mean, that's every woman, and then you have to you have to take into context the maturity of the person. So, but yeah, those were the main talking points: child support, black women liking thugs and only wanting no good men, black women not choosing better, black women not, they only want to go with thugs. They don't want the intelligent brother who might be working at McDonald's, but is on the come up or something. I don't know. Bunch of nonsense. It's the same. It's literally the same stuff from 10 years ago. No difference.
Okay, do you remember the Wall of Silence?
Sounds familiar, but I might not. I can't really recall too much.
Okay, I was going to talk about it because it's kind of similar to SYSBM. So it's pretty much like, okay, black women are quote unquote dysfunctional, whatnot. So we're just going to like put up a wall of silence, not talk to them and date outside our race. If that's what I remember seeing from some of the videos that are still up. A lot of them are deleted.
Yeah. Yeah, that was probably kind of like the precursor to SYSBM. Because, I mean, according to some YouTubers out there, you do have a lot of people who are Gen Z, a lot of young black men that they're not saying anything. They're just dating out, whatever that means. I mean, I know what it means, but I just know what it means.
Yeah, they just pretty much argue that Generation Z, because they quote unquote saw like all of the function, they're going to date outside their race, but they kind of ignore the fact that this current generation is more diverse than past generation, and because of more diversified workplaces and schools where people are actually more likely to meet one another and date one another, that it increases to interracial dating. But the group is habitually reductionist. They don't really try to understand any kind of nuance.
Yeah, it's literally black and white when it comes to these people. There is no nuance. If you're like me, there is nowhere you can really meet in the middle and agree.
Mm-hmm. Now I'm curious because we did talk about some of these earliest people, but as you know, O'Shea, Ingram, and Obsidian are kind of like attributed as like the founding fathers of the Black Manosphere. But doing some research, I kind of learned that they kind of took a leadership position when a leadership vacuum opened up. And I don't know, did you watch them in their earlier days? Because I haven't seen their content from earlier years. I only read Obsidian's blog posts and Return of Kings and The Voice for Men.
Yeah, I have. Obsidian has just become more obnoxious as the years pass by. I really hope he gets the help that he deserves. Then you had Angry Man, Valdez, Manawan, whatever his name is at this point, the street conservative. He plays so many cast of characters. But yeah, he's back in the day he was pretty angry. Now he's kind of light, but back then he was pretty angry. He didn't really talk about politics too much. It was mainly kind of, I would say, about child support and why black women do this and that, of course, since we're limiting it to black women in this space, or at least they do. And then he had O'Shea, who his content would kind of he would talk about the issues with the black community and whatnot between black men and black women. He's not really as serious. He's more comedic. He's not as extreme as the other ones. He does things in a more, like I said, comedic fashion. But yeah, he has definitely rebranded his channel. He's become like the whole, I guess I could say, leader of the Negro Manosphere, the Black Manosphere.
Okay. Now, it's funny you say that because I know a lot of them, not just those three, but others, they do look up a lot to David Carroll and Tommy Sotomayor. So I remember we talked about this on a Zoom call a while ago, but can you talk about like the influence those two individuals have had on this space as we know it now?
Yes. So there are some people that I call the disciples of Saint David Carroll. They they would pretty much watch his videos and kind of just pick up on the talking points. He's very mediocre. I don't really like him these days. If you ask me, he watches too much interracial adult films and uses them as memes in his videos. And that's pretty much kind of his whole basis of like the black women having the white man as for God or whatever, just a bunch of nonsense. So there are a couple of YouTubers that were influenced by David Carroll. Some of them are no longer on YouTube. Young Urban Gammon was one of them. He was the urban hood black guy, so-called turned so-called conservative. Excuse me. He used to have videos on YouTube, but they are no longer here. I can't find a trace of the man, if you ask me. You had Kid Organic, who makes videos. All of his videos are blaming black women. Even when the subject is not about black women, he finds a way to pin the blame on the black woman. Then you have Sean James, who talks about beta males and whatnot. He sells his books and talks about comic books, but he used to be a close follower of David Carroll, closely linked to David Carroll. You had a Quasi 100, aka the brother of Logic and Common Sense, also associated and influenced greatly by David Carroll. There were a couple of other people, I believe. I want to say GW3X as well. He was also heavily influenced by David Carroll. And you can tell because these so-called, as I dub them, disciples of David Carroll, they love to kind of borrow. They even pick up his speech pattern. Kid Organic is pretty good at that. If you listen to him and listen to David Carroll, lots of similarities there. But yes, David Carroll's a heavily major player and influencer in this game. To some, he's referred to as Uncle Dave. I don't know why. All of his videos are usually a classic, as referred to by his commenters in the comment section. And then you had Tommy Sotomayor, who's also notorious for the bashing of black women. He's another major influencer. Before people even come to David Carroll, they will come to Tommy Sotomayor. Tommy Sotomayor is probably one of the first people, or one of the first channels you'll come across in the Black Manosphere, if you will. I dub him the Black Sandman. Very comedic and whatnot. Very entertaining. I would say charming, but I don't quite know about that. But he is entertaining and does seem to gain people's attention pretty easily. So.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Sotomayor because I came across him when I was a junior in college in 2012, and I found him entertaining, but I didn't really agree with anything he said. But I didn't watch him for long. I was shocked to see that he was still around, but he's nowhere near as popular as he used to be.
Yeah, he's nowhere. His channels keep getting killed off. So each time that happens, I notice there's kind of like there's like a split in terms of viewership, subscribers, and whatnot. But to me, at this point, Tommy Sotomayor he's pretty much regurgitated the same thing. He's made a business out of the whole black woman bashing thing, and then he only does it with like the lowest common denominator of black woman out there, like the low class ratchet one. And these guys seem to do that in this space. They'll take like the lowest common denominator of type of person and just use them as a punching bag. And it's like, of course, we already we know that. We know like their character and class level.
Yeah, when it comes to that, there's like always an element of truth into what some of the stuff they're saying, but it definitely is very cherry picking. I kind of learned having investigated some of their backgrounds. A lot of them are like from these like impoverished or working class African American communities. So I kind of understand why they conceive this grass is greener concept. As I have said numerous times, I grew up in a working class Puerto Rican community with the largest group. Second to that was Dominicans, and many of the issues they talk about, I'm like, I've seen the same thing among poor Puerto Ricans, Dominican, poor white people, but I was the third largest group in my community, and so I never really associated certain behavior patterns with race. I always saw it more as a class thing, to be honest.
Right. It's like me. Like I don't really understand why these individuals here on YouTube make a big deal out of interracial dating and access to white and other non-black women. Because me, I've grown up around The hood, that's not really normal to me. I've grown up in a predominantly white community, and then later on a mixture of people back in Houston. But yeah, these individuals are very strange when it comes to that. So I always have to question, like, where are these people from, geographically? What are the demographics like? And to me, you ring it right on the bell. Working class, predominantly African American communities in the East Coast, so urban
Hmm.
type of areas.
Yeah, I do agree. Okay, so I do want to move on to this is something interesting because actually I got an email about this and somebody explained this to me in an email. So I wanted to discuss the relationship between the Black manosphere and the pro-Black community. So I learned from that person that a lot of pro-Blacks, even ADOS YouTubers, used to actually bash Black women before switching their content into something more profitable, at least in their views.
Oh yes, actually, there was Cynthia G and Paris Milan. A lot of the men in this space like to rag on Cynthia G and Paris Milan for their current day content, but I clearly remember before 2015, they actually used to make a lot of pro-black content and talk about black men dating out and uh, black love, black families. But they saw what they experienced in the pro-black movement kind of turned them off, and it turned a lot of other women off, especially the conscious community. You can put that within the black community. So a lot of the women in the space, which I have to agree with, they would say that the pro-black community is just pro-black male and not pro-black as a whole, which I agree because you had some spaces that like the Hebrew Israelites and a lot of these pro-black guys, they seem to kind of want all control, total control. And to me, they take on this whole alpha mentality where you drag the woman back and just beat her with a club type of caveman stuff. When that's not how things work. That's not how you win people over. Evidently, they have not learned that. Still haven't learned that. But yeah, the that's kind of the link between pro-black community and the Black Manosphere. That's why you see a lot of these women breaking away because they were once pro-black, but they discovered that the pro-black community is just pro-black male. They don't care about women's issues. They don't care about the children. They just want to lead just because they're a man, even if they're not the best man.
Okay, and I know, like Tariq Nasheed used to be a pickup artist, if I'm correct, or he used to teach game. At least that's to my knowledge.
Yes, macking, if
Hmm.
you will. He actually had a couple of albums. He used to rap. They're pretty funny. uh, he
Oh,
had
okay.
he had a television show on MTV back in the day. I cannot recall what it was, but either he had a television show or he appeared on a television show on MTV. Gave a couple of seminars and whatnot. To me, he's like the black Roosh V. But yeah, he's running the whole pro black game now.
Okay, see, I saw the documentaries. I can't remember what's this called. The
Hidden colors.
you saw what?
Hidden colors.
Yeah, but I'm a historian, so I can't endorse that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think it's really accurate. A lot of the stuff in this space is like kind of pseudoscience to me. Like you even look at young Pharaoh. Young Pharaoh's now he's turned conservative. He was recently invited to the I believe it's the conservative the CI I believe they call it, but they revoked his invitation because he had said some anti-white comments and whatnot, which
Mhm.
they should have known if they did their thorough research on the guy. It's easily out there, but yeah, you have a lot of guys in this space. They're pretty much opportunist. They'll switch up in a heartbeat.
So that leads me. I wasn't going to ask this, but I don't care. I'm a political guy. Real, I'm a news junkie. So yeah, I do want to talk about politics. So as you know, like the Trump campaign and presidency emboldened red pill communities to be more outspoken, particularly about politics. I'm unaware whether they did that with like Jair Bolsonaro in Brazil or Erdogan in Turkey or Marie Le Pen, Le Pen, mispronounced her name, but France was another right wing candidate.
Mhm.
But yeah, with Trump, they kind of coalesced and actually started to become a little bit more political. But was the group always as political before Trump's presidential campaign?
Uh, yeah, but in a different way. But I would say it really ramped up during President Trump, and the reason is because people would consider Donald Trump to be some kind of alpha male. I don't know where they're going with that one, but they consider him to be an alpha male. They consider him to be like a self-made man who will put women in their place. He's going to bring back the so-called patriarchy, if we even have one at this point. Um, you know, these guys, they tend to believe in this whole leave it to beaver life. That was just like Hollywood. Women, that never actually really existed. That was just for television. I mean, granted, you did have women out there who were being abused and whatnot, but the whole Ward Cleaver and June Cleaver stereotype, that was just strictly television because the average person had to work. Um, but yeah, they consider Donald Trump to be like this whole person who's going to put women back into their place. He's going to restore the so-called rights of men that have been diminished. Um, a lot of the reason for the Black Manosphere hyping on the Trump train was that he was supposedly going to revoke or cut off access to Snap, but as you can see, that was a whole nothing burger. It was just like a minor little change, I believe, and then that was it. But otherwise, people are still on Snap. I mean, people are still on, women are still on Wig, you know. But yeah, that was the whole reason why he was going to restore, and because he was going to so-called uh, break, do away with Snap and Wig. Black women were going to come back begging men. They even said the same thing about COVID, but it still hasn't happened. But that's what these men want. They want women on their knees. Oh, please take us back. But no, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned COVID because so one of my main criticisms with the manosphere, even though people say like, well, manosphere isn't 100% toxic, which I agree. I'm like, no, there are like some admirable characteristics about it. But one reason why I could personally never endorse it is because there is just far too much misinformation. And I do remember when the pandemic first broke out, that a lot of people just downplayed it, say like, oh, this is overreaction. More people, it's just like the flu. And then worried about whether women, and then, so in the black manosphere, it's like black women are going to become submissive, and in the white sector of the manosphere, it's more like women are going to become traditional housewives again. And I remember you said that you have a problem with a lot of misinformation, but are there other things? Are there other things that the manosphere spews constantly that you have an issue with, like fringe science and false statistics and whatnot?
Yeah, they seem to be in love with these statistics. I don't really like to cite statistics too much because it's not really representative of personal experience or experience of everyone. Uh, I think like when it comes to that type of data, it is kind of passed off in terms of a certain bias or slant.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of misinformation out there. I've heard just the strangest things, like people think that women are all losing their jobs in COVID, and that they're gonna come back to men. They say things about single mothers. They love to rag on single mothers. Yeah, but I've just heard all kinds of weird, bizarre talking points and theories. People
Mm-hmm.
think, yeah, it's like some of these men kind of believe that if they uh, stop working and whatnot and go to different places, that women are gonna follow them and whatnot. But that's not happening, because if so, it would have happened already.
Okay, it's funny with the misinformation. One thing I think some people don't bring up a lot is like how they kind of just misuse history or just say false things about history. My favorite is like when they say like, black women that always truly desire to be a white man. They cite Daughters of the Trade, which I contacted the author and she called their arguments ridiculous. And I actually took the time to read it. And I know where they got it from, but he actually kind of read the analysis of it. And you see that even in the white sector, they try to appropriate the killing of Emmett Till by arguing that this is like a Me Too kind of incident, but totally eradicate the fact that that race was a central component of that case. And there's numerous other examples. I can't think of everything, but those are the two most common ones I hear often.
Yeah, they tend to do this whole yeah. There's a lot of information. They do the whole race thing, and it's kind of weird because you have like SYSBM who they promote interracial relations. They
Mhm.
see weird things. They refer to black women as scraggle daggles. I think some of them are kind of just genuinely a bit out of touch as far as it goes with interracial relations. They seem to put it up on a pedestal.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a video about that one day. How like, oh, in my personal opinion, I think Black YouTube has horrible takes on interracial dating. Actually, it just makes it seem like everybody does it out of spite, which of course
Yeah,
isn't always the case. By the way.
yeah, yeah. It's not. A lot of the things here they're not really realistic, and I do think a lot of these guys have a they have this whole caricature of what it means to be a man and masculine.
Mhm.
And it's kind of funny because they consider, like I said, they consider Donald Trump to be an alpha male. They consider you have some of these guys on YouTube like entrepreneurs and cars. You know, like these guys, they'll have bald heads. They'll try and grow out their beards and put on some muscles to look very masculine, and it's just strange to me. It's like a whole caricature of masculinity.
It's funny we say that because one major criticism, and I've said this in the video before, one major criticism I have of the manosphere, particularly the Black manosphere, is that it criticizes and condemns the rigid confinements of Black masculinity. Being aggressive, hypersexual, etc. But at the same time, it created this esoteric lexicon where it exerts similar confinements, where it pretty much it polices its own definition of masculinity. Like White Knight, Simp, if you criticize it, they pretty much try to assassinate your manhood. I was kind of, have you ever noticed that? That's just something I've noticed that I've said several times, but I haven't seen other people state as well.
Yeah, I would say I even experienced it, and that's what I say. It's like when you're and some of the guys even talk about it though. But my best reference is that if you're a black man like myself, then you're kind of just put into a box, or you're invisible. Like no one really notices you. White people and black people, no one really notices you. Um, but yeah, you do have a lot of guys they're quick to call a man a simp if you do things for women. But to me, a simp is just someone that gives women a pass on bad character, bad behavior. I don't do that. I mean, I call out anybody who has bad character, bad behavior. But yeah, there are definitely some guys out there, some content creators that do. Uh, they put on like this whole. They create their own little definitions of masculinity, and it's just very limiting. You know, like I mean, people might not consider me to be masculine, but I mean, I don't care. Um, it's not really like what they think. It's more so what I think. But to me, it's just like trivial things, like oh, you have to be manly, you have to have a deep voice, muscles, yada yada yada. I look at it more so as a somebody who exudes confidence, somebody who's well respected in their community and by other people.
Mhm. Okay. So yeah, I do want to move the conversation along to. I only have a few more questions. Like I said, it's not going to be super long. For
Yeah.
so yeah. So during your interview with a woman's perspective, they said that the manosphere opened up to women recently, but as you and I both know, women have always been in the space before they get kicked out. Once the group eventually gets bored of them. So do you remember some of these women and what did they talk about?
I do. You had Karen Tron, who looks a bit of like a butch lesbian, but I believe she's not. But that's
Mhm.
likely why she doesn't really get the traction because she doesn't have the whole sex appeal. Same with Diana Davidson. But those women, they didn't really pander to men like your Jessica X's or your Danica Marie's and most of the other women in the space. Nola Girl, if you want a non-black example, Nola Girl 504 is a pick me as well, pander. But you have Karen Strawn, Diana Davidson. They were more of the intellectual, academic side of the argument. They would talk about child support, men's rights, that sort of stuff, like custody battles and whatnot. Better representation for men in the court system, like parenting laws, and all of that.
I remember we did talk about the fact that sometimes there are women in the space who ideologically are more aligned with the manosphere, but they get no traction because of lack of sex appeal. This doesn't just happen in the black sector, even though some audience might think so. It also happens in like the
Yeah.
larger manosphere. But the manosphere kind of gravitates to women who are somewhat conventionally attractive, even though they're not saying anything unique or insightful. Like Roma Army, that's like my favorite. Make $13,000 a month on Patreon, but by selling news mostly, to be totally honest with you, but doesn't say anything novel about men's rights.
Yeah, and the weird part is that she has tattoos, and some of the guys in the space, I'm pretty sure they would frown upon that. But I guess as long as you're stroking men's egos, you say something. I mean, I call it that whole little uh, phenomenon with the waitresses. How waitresses are nice to you for the tip, and you think that they're actually attracted to you, but they're just being nice for a tip. That's how most of these. That's how I look at some of the women in this space. They're just kind of saying things to get in good favor with the men. I don't know if most of them actually believe in the things that they're saying or whatnot.
Now, what are some of the reasons why the group gets like just bored with women who they once celebrated? Like, I know they used to somebody in chat talk about Laura Southern. Actually, I was actually a picture of a friend, but that was more alt right.
Yeah.
The more alt right crowd. I remember you said Nola Girl was popular, but she fell out of favor with white men once it was found out that her husband was black.
Yes. Yeah. They did not like that. They started calling her a coal burner. They would say other derogatory things like, "You got to pay. You got to pay the toll. If you want to burn the coal." It was just silly stuff like that. It was ridiculous. Yeah, but Nola Girl 504. I believe you might have had a
Mhm.
few other ones, but she's kind of the ones that I remember. Nola Girl, like I said, Karen Strawn doesn't really even get talked about anymore. Diana Davidson, if I were to ask people who they are, they'd be like, "Who is she?" You have Lauren Southern. You had, but I think when Lauren Southern was pictured with again a black man,
Mhm.
they really take too kind to that, and they dropped her. They had what's their face? I think Tommy Lauren too, but I could be mistaken. I don't know.
Mhm.
Her and Lauren Southern look so similar. I just get them mixed up.
Oh yeah, no, Tommy Lawrence somebody different actually.
Yeah.
Pretty much we're saying like the reasons why women fall out of favor it varies actually. It's not always same reason.
Right, right. Um, it could be that the guys just kind of get bored with them, or a new girl comes along, or a new woman comes along, and starts making content. So
Okay, so yeah, I have two more questions unless I have follow up questions. But
yeah,
so yeah, this is something I do want to make a video about this too about how habitually redundant the red pill is.
yeah,
Because what happens is a lot of people, subscribers come in cycles. So, say somebody comes in 2019, it's very rare that they're going to actually do any background research
right, right.
of the individual content creators and what was discussed. So, and like even like the red pill courses, a lot of these guys are really just selling regurgitated materials from books that nobody read.
Yeah.
So the red pill overall, including like the white sector, the black sector, what are some of the main topics people discuss today that were discussed years ago? Like I know foreign women is one.
Yeah.
I've read 7-year-old blog posts that talk about Eastern European women being better than
Mhm.
American women, and people
Yeah,
still have these debates today.
yeah, it's so old. Like I said, when I was 12, I would see those on the Roosh V forums, and eventually I figured it out. I mean, it might take a little bit longer for some of these men and guys to figure it out, but women are the same everywhere you go. Um, Fundamentally, they're the same everywhere you go. But they are unique, but they pretty much they operate on the same. You guys just treat it like a science. So they had the whole foreign women versus American women. That's a played out trope. They had the whole child support, I believe, argument. That's a played out trope. They have with the red pill, don't cohabitate or sleep with a woman or don't live with a woman. That's another trope. It's just so many of these. I could probably go on and on. We'd be here for a very long time.
No, we still got time, so I'm kind of curious because one, I want to know how much, how long have they been dating, like debating the benefits of marriage?
For a while now, I would say maybe from 2013 or so. I would see more guys kind of start to pop up and talk about marriage and not marrying women, don't get her pregnant, that typical stuff. And it was just, we're still having these discussions in 2021. But I mean, like I said, it's a whole money making thing. You have to repeat. I mean, you can say the same thing that was said years ago. It's just that if you switch up your content and how it's offered,
Hmm?
I'm pretty sure you can keep people into you for a very long time. And,
Yeah, as you know, one of my old videos when I talked about the monetization of the red pill, my
Mhm.
main argument is that it's really just like a rebranded version of the pickup artist industry, where content creators, who many of them who were former pickup artists, are literally using the same marketing strategies, but are kind of changing it. Like it's a little bit more political. It's like adopt right wing political views and don't befriend women, etc. So how, in terms of the economics of the red pill, which is actually my favorite videos to make videos about, my favorite content to make videos about, how profitable was it before in the earlier years?
hmm. I would say it wasn't as profitable as compared to now. Like you have far more subscribers, far more of a viewer base. You have far more people to get money from in terms of YouTube. I would say due to COVID, there's a lot more exposure to this movement compared to back then. Because back then you actually had to look for it. Like nowadays you can find it so easily. There's a guy, Portuguese MGTOW. He was going around writing uh, MGTOW on dollar bills and handing them out. He was writing MGTOW on bathroom stalls and writing it. I've seen MGTOW hashtag MGTOW and like some news articles in the comment section. So it's pretty much mainstream or has some exposure at this point.
Okay, yeah, I kind of realize. I mean, I think the larger manosphere is much more profitable
Yeah.
than the black manosphere because people still rely like on super chats and cash apps, and yeah, those only go so far compared to organizing conferences, which many of the
Mhm.
conferences are, according to Anthony Dream Johnson, have literally just like they were one and done. They happened and nobody had any follow up.
Yeah. Um, a lot of the conferences are kind of like bull. They're
Yep.
they're more of a way to salesman stuff, like a non-existent product. And to me, the guys who do the conferences, conventions, they are no to me they're no different from a prominent individual in the black world of YouTube that will go unnamed. I'm pretty sure we all know who that person is. If they Time Magazine might as well as put him on the magazine as Man of the Year because it literally is it's his year. Um, yeah,
Hmm.
but yeah, you have a lot of guys into that whole conference stuff. I look at it like this: YouTube is a business first and foremost. This is entertainment. That's what I considered it all as. I considered it as entertainment, but I would just take a little bit from what the guys would say, but most of it is just ridiculous. I mean, most of the stuff like don't cohabitate or live with a woman, really a woman that you don't know or you're not sure about. I mean, I can kind of make sense of that one, but all of the other stuff, it promotes degeneracy, like the whole pump and dump. Uh, these guys want to talk about single mothers, but they create the problems that they talk about in the first place.
Yeah, from my view, I think because the subject is so evergreen and because subscribers come in cycles, it's always going to be profitable. You go, you
Yeah.
talk to a certain subscriber base right now, 2 years from now, you'll have a new one, you'll still be giving you money. And that's why the conversation is just so habitually redundant.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah. Very, very redundant. They've recycled and rehashed the same talking points for years now. For years.
Okay. So yeah, I'll just ask like two more questions. Yeah, in your opinion, how did content change with YouTube's new guidelines and the purge from that hit list that was made in, I think, like 2017 or 2018?
Yeah, so in the Black Manosphere, there were, I would say, the first wave of divestors, the OGs, Simone 56, I believe, or it might be Simone 57. Simone 57, Isadora Storm, Miss Archduchess, Brooklyn Blue, um, and I think that's it. Oh, Egypt Anne. And I want to say Shira 7. Shout out to you. It's my girl. They they had like a whole, I guess they were associated with a hit list that in a flagging campaign,
Mhm.
the men were pretty up in arms and scared about that. And I would say like that's kind of around the time when Tommy Sotomayor really started to kind of lose his power or brand. Um, but yeah, they had it was the whole hit list. I noticed how the content changed. It became a bit more kind of toned down in a way. Some channels started disappearing. A lot of people started moving behind paywalls. Uh, but you have some people that they only ramped up the crazy, reckless rhetoric. Yes, and you had Sophia Nelson and Deborah Cooper. I definitely,
Oh, I remember Sophia Nelson. I saw the video that she made about Obsidian.
yeah. And then you
Since
had,
Obsidian has this weird feud with Emanisa Joan that he claims he's over, but he still talks about it.
yeah, he still talks about it. I remember from when he's
Yeah.
Jones. He would always
Mhm.
go about her on Twitter. Oh, she said she tweeted back at me. Blah blah blah. They had the pink pill too, aka Crystalline Karazin. She's been in this space for a very long time, since 2011, 2012, I believe.
Mhm.
Yeah, she's rebranded so many times. She used to be the girl who swirls, now she's the pink pill. Yeah. But I mean, the thing about her is that to me, she's more reasonable. She's not out here saying things like, oh, the things that a lot of the men say in this space, like, oh, uh, the white men like black women, or the slave masters, they didn't rape the women because the women liked it. Like they would say horrible, disgusting things like that. And David Carroll, I put that in his camp. He's more of um, he kind of really goes into that whole ideology. He has a whole uh, rabbit hole series about it, which I think is just kind of like historical revisionism, and that does kind of occur a lot in this space. They like to revise history and say things, kind of take things out of context. Oh, and shout out to Kim123 and yourself, because without you both, I wouldn't have been able to really see a bit outside of the manosphere. Because when you have a different
Mhm.
perspective, you do a lot of the stuff that these guys say is just sounds downright clownish and foolish. Like I said, a lot of these guys just seem to have like this whole caricature of masculinity and what it means to be a man, as far as that goes in this space.
Okay. Now, I know we talked about the content change. So are there any content creators you saw change for like the worse and the better?
For content creators that change for the worse or better, content
Well,
creators,
and better too, because I don't want to make it seem like, people who were like somewhat in a rut didn't eventually grow out of that phase.
right, right. Angry Man's kind of calmed down because he really used to be Angry Man. I was really concerned about that guy. Um, I was concerned that he might have a heart attack or just die due to the stress of his anger. But he's pretty much changed. He's matured. He's toned down a bit. O'Shea Duke Jackson, he's kind of found his own little niche. Uh, Obsidian, to me, he's only gotten more obnoxious as time goes by. I really hope that he can get over whatever high school days he has in his head. Let's see, other content creators. Sandman got pretty boring as far as the white manosphere goes. Yeah, Angry Man has rebranded so many times. You have, let's see, you have other Steve Hoka. He's gotten a little bit better. He kind of dumped the whole MGTOW thing. I mean, he's the one that I kind of got on board with him when he told me that when he told us all that MGTOW would die in like 2017, like it would become less. It's pretty much a joke. It would become a joke by 2017. Well, those are some of the YouTubers that I find have some of the well-known names, at least, that I find have become a bit more reasonable or worse.
Okay, I would say yeah. Because for me, I first came across O'Shea Duke Jackson, and I didn't think anything of it. I was like, it's entertainment. And I remember he would invite Donovan Sharp, and I found him entertaining. I would watch it. I'm like, man, this dude is like really misogynistic, and kind of like I don't think he's really retrospective because he kind of bashes black women, but he has so many stories of like non-black women just doing him dirty, actually. And his rhetoric, it's only toned down because he was deplatformed from YouTube twice.
Yeah, so a lot of guys had to actually kind of change up their content because they just were able to kind of say whatever they want and still are in a way. I thought during the Capitol Hill incident that this would lead to the Manosphere hopefully getting some channels like terminated because it is closely linked with the alt-right, but unfortunately my wish didn't happen yet. Maybe someday, but I don't know.
Yeah, man, there were some content creators there, or some, like, I know Trade MBD was there, but he denied it. But he has this video on another video sharing platform where he's like almost by the door. I'm like, dude, you were almost there. You were right there in the crowd. And it's like Terrence Pope. He was at the rally, and some other Pat Stedman, who actually broke into Nancy Pelosi's office and got arrested, and a pickup artist too came there with armed, and now he got arrested too.
Yeah. Now I will say there's content creators that have gone for the worst. I would say Reluctant Nobby. Reluctant Nobby used to be on the pro-black tip. And then out of all people, this guy starts talking about, bro, let's go on to Brazil and Colombia. I'm like, what? This was the dude that was all about pro-black and black women. When did that change? And then you had Brian Solange. That guy's a real piece of work. That is just one disgusting individual. He's awful. You can go to Free Speech Avenger and see the things that he uploads. It's terrible. I still have flashbacks from the most recent thing he uploaded, which I will not endorse or link out here. That's just horrible. But yeah, he's gotten a bit X-rated. He has been around for a long time, and it seems like he just gets worse as the years go by, and that's why he's pretty much not making things on YouTube because he can't. YouTube won't allow the stuff that he puts out. It will get taken down.
Yeah, he got like the platform 6 times, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
They go 6 times.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. I always think about the evolution of people, and there are people who I think change for the better. Like I did see Boogie, somebody I like. He said when he came in, he used to be like, typical, but now he's definitely like more self-improvement. Yeah. And there's others who, like Rush V and Yogi Opes who found the quote-unquote God pill, but they're still like the God pill is still very anti-liberal and anti-feminist. It's just cloaked in Christianity.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that's what these guys see this as, but like there's a way that they can fix all of this. I mean, just get together and have families, stop pumping and dumping women. I mean, like the women are out here looking at what you all are doing and they're gonna be like, yeah, I can do that too. These guys, they constantly create the whole problems that they talk about, and there's an easy fix for it. Yeah, but they keep coming up with new things, the God pill. Quite frankly, I don't really look at Rush V or Yogi Abs either because they to me they have not renounced their PUA ways. Still think that they're single and can play the field. There's also what do you call it? Ray Mill and Mir, now in the Black Manosphere, there's like a tendency to kind of there's this whole pimping thing, and they tend to put them kind of up on high regard. Sinful to P, nobody will call these guys out or disassociate them from the space. I don't know why, knowing their history.
I mean, Hardcore Tito's still here, so.
Yeah, in fact, I have to go in on him. Hardcore Tito, I actually used to watch him for a while. He used to have this, I believe she was either Scottish or Irish girlfriend, Meg B, who would comment in his comment section. I don't think they're still together, but the guy seems to disappear every once in a while because it means he's off in prison. He's in prison or in jail. He's been in and out of jail for a while. To me, he comes off as a very violent guy. You can tell by his videos and the way he talks. Seems like he has a temperament. I used to watch him, and unfortunately, I did consider most of the things that he would say as entertainment. I mean, it was in a way funny, but not really funny. Definitely not really intellectual or anything to be tuning into. Many of these guys, they kind of take his words as gospel. Gospel.
So, well, we're actually a little over an hour, so I just want to say, do you have any last words for the audience?
Not really. I haven't really been paying attention to the chat because it's chaotic, but that's pretty much kind of the history and my personal journey of MGTOW, of the Manosphere. Sorry, of the Manosphere, and after experiencing that, I just don't. This is more of like a place for entertainment, and it's somewhere where it's like a hotel. You know, people check in and they only stay for a short little while, and then they leave. They leave. They go. But yeah, you know, the people who are out against me, I don't. They don't really surprise me. You know, I
Mhm.
love them all. I love my supporters. I love my haters and critics and detractors. I love you all. That's it.
Oh. Okay, well, yeah, like I said, the purpose of this conversation was really kind of go over, get somewhat of a coherent narrative of the history of this space, because, like I said, YouTube, in my personal opinion, is the worst archive. And as somebody who travels across the country to university archives or to attics or public libraries and search through documents, I realized documenting a community that primarily exists online, it takes a whole nother set of skills
Hmm.
um, to do so. Not to mention, like I said, this is a very young community, but even though it's only like what 5, 7, 10 years old somewhat, there's a lot of mythology surrounded by why it forms and why it exists. Because personally, I never heard guys in my personal life mention, rant about feminism until I came across this group, and I noticed how, like, people enter the space with romantic frustrations, and then once they're in there for a longer period of time, they kind of adopt these very fringe talking points about gynocracy and feminism destroying the Western world, and how to reinstall and pretty much admire in Muslims countries that have draconian laws against women's freedoms. And just, yeah, it's just too much of a rabbit hole, in my opinion. Now, I'm not saying everything is bad, and I'll make a video about that in the future. But overall, like I said, I just couldn't recommend it because too much of a rabbit hole and it spews too much misinformation. And all I have to mention is a lot of it is hurt guys trying to lead other hurt guys.
Yeah, yep, and that's why it won't really get anywhere. Because once guys kind of latch onto a woman, or a woman takes interest in them, they're gonna drop all of this. Well, I did. I was starting to drop it even before then because it just takes a lot of energy to hate women and to pretend not to like women. But yeah, you also had the Asian McGowan murder. I kind of wanted to touch on. Someone mentioned it in
Oh yeah, we
the
mentioned it. Yeah, you can talk about it again. I know we mentioned it. I don't want to make it seem. I don't want to make it seem like this is like inevitable, because I was asked this question about, is it a violent group? And I told the host on the Champagne Sharks that white male entitlement isn't the same as black male entitlement. It does. I mean, black males can definitely be entitled, but it does play out differently. But no, you can definitely talk about it, because that's the incident. I remember that incident when it originally happened.
Yeah, because she would be about in her 30s now.
Mm-hmm.
Before she was like around my age, 20, when she was unfortunately taken away. You know, but yeah, Anthony Powell and that murder of Asia McGowan is commonly pinned on or associated with the Black Manosphere. Yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
was. I believe, if I'm correct, Anthony Powell was listening to the likes of Sergeant Willie Pete, Tom Mayor, maybe at the time. If you go back and listen to him, his a lot of his rhetoric sounded just like that. Yeah, but the Manosphere is definitely toxic, and like I said, it just has a caricature view on in terms of masculinity. I mean, because I would, to be honest, I would consider myself more masculine than some of the guys who project this wannabe masculine image in the manosphere. You know, I've been called soft. I've been called all of these names and just nonsense. You know, they like to claim that this is a brotherhood, but it's not. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
Women have more of a sisterhood compared to brotherhood that men claim to have, which is why I admire women because when it comes to women, an attack on one woman is kind of viewed as an attack on all in a way.
I disagree a little bit because I mean, I would say personally, I would never consider anybody who I know strictly online to be a friend because I never met them in person. And there's like a long history of like the men and the women both backstabbing each other. But like they never met in person. But I realize a lot of people in this space are socially isolated and become closer to people in the space than they are with people in their actual lives. Like Man of Tomorrow, who famously said that he was closer to people in the manosphere than he was with members of his own family, which kind of shows me a lot of people here don't really, I don't think they know how to interact with people in their actual lives.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I would just give a bit of background. I spent a lot of time on the computer, but I'm starting to spend a lot of time outside. But I noticed that the more time you spend online on the internet, the more time you spend in the space, the bit deranged you become, and your thinking tends to end up being warped. So the less time people can spend away from this area of the internet, the better. Because
Yeah.
it's crazy. I mean, that's just my personal experience.
Oh, okay. Well, David, I appreciate this conversation. Glad it was a pretty good first live stream. And actually, everybody, I'll be doing this again on Tuesday when I'll interview a former follower of the Red Pill at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. So, other than that, I don't really have much to say. And I hope everybody have a great night. I got plenty of work to do. So, I don't know. Any last words or? Okay.
Shout out to Kim123. Shout out to Face and LMS. Shout out to yourself. You're doing great work. You all can go check out Expose the Manosphere's other channel, Tracking the Manosphere. There's great funny clips on there, which really will get you laughing, and you'll really have a chance to just to laugh at and listen to how crazy these talking points are that these guys spew on the rhetoric. It really just, it's silly. That's
Okay.
I
Okay.
want to thank you for
Yeah.
having me on. Yeah.
I appreciate this. You had a very unique story, and I feel like there has to be some kind of outline history of this online community that's more coherent than what currently exists, and not as mythologized or romanticized.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I look forward to reading these live chats later on because I see a lot of people arguing, but I couldn't really keep up. So
This is gonna be a popular one. All you have to do is just stick my name in. I'm like the antithesis of Kevin Samuels.
okay.
Stick my name in, and people will definitely start coming, I guess, because I am making a name for myself.
Okay. Well, I say have a good night, everybody. So.